All right, so I think we're going to get this going. I think we're waiting for one more to come back, but I'm sure he's excited to not hear about 5900. But all right, so my name's Tyler Troutman. I'm with Market Development. I'm based in San Francisco. I'm also here with Chris Neiman, who covers your region. Ben Cook, who's in the back. He's from Canada, so feel free to make fun of him. Yeah, don't hold back. He's good. He just got rid of his BlackBerry like a week ago, so feel free to make fun of him. And if you see blackberries in this presentation, it's because of him and Canada, but mainly him. So we're going to go through a couple of our different discussion systems today. We're going to start with 5900, move into MXCW, which is kind of our new thing we're really excited about, wrap up with MXC, and then we're going to actually do a fun, funky, comedy-themed council meeting up here at the end, just so everyone here can get a good idea of how the MXC system and all of its different features, functionalities, and license all work together. And so we'll actually be starting out with 5900. Spoiler alert, there is 5900 in this room. So as I'm discussing this, don't feel like you're missing anything on the tables or you can't find it. It's just not here. But has anybody worked with 5900 in the past? Not you? Not you? No. None of those people way back there. So 5900 is kind of the system that you're going to want to use for those crazy spaces. Has incredible feature functionality. The sound quality is really great. It goes together really, really fast. But your customer comes to you and goes, yeah, we don't need voting. We don't need this. We don't need that. This might even be a portable system where they still want a wired option. This is going to be it. Goes together crazy quick. Not a lot of parts and pieces to it. No real software to get into. Everything's browser-based, can even be configured from the front of the CCU. So a lot of flexibility, really simple operation, really easy to teach somebody, hey, this is how you set it up, and they can get this thing up and going really quick. So to kind of dig into the components, not a lot here, but your heart of the system, and you're going to see this thing multiple times today, is the CCU. The CCU is the brain of the entire system, has the ability to power up to roughly 60 units off of that base power supply, depending on cable length and some other things, but roughly 60 units with, you'll see some accessories with the ability to add a whole lot more if you want to. But this is where it's all going to come back to. There's the 4 network jacks there on your left-hand side, and those are for your different DCS LAN chains, and you can see we have audio inputs and audio outputs, and then a network port so you can actually control this over the browser base. As I said, it can be configured from the front panel. You can see it in the rack sitting over there under the blue nooks. It's kind of that single rack space unit there, and it's the same one for 5900 and MXC. And but it can all be done from the front, or you can hop into a browser, work it off an iPad, work it off a laptop, and this is where the flexibility of the system really comes in, where you can come in and name people, you can add role functionality, operation modes, if you want to turn microphones on and off. We'll get into this a little bit with MXC, but it kind of has the same functionality of 3 different views. You have an administrator view to where you can get in and change everything, gain levels, all that type of stuff. A chairman view, which you could give to your chairman to be able to turn people on and off. If there's request to speak lists, they can bring people in. And then just a display view if you need like a secondary screen somewhere out in the hallway that just shows who's speaking, who's in the request list. So to dig into those components, we have the 5980, which is kind of our portable delegate unit. Really sleek, really slim, sounds really good. Has touch button overlays that kind of dictate the role it's going to be. A 3.5 millimeter headphone jack on the side, so if there's some interpretation that needs to happen, they can plug in and listen to that. Or if they're just really hard of hearing, they just want to hear the floor mix louder in their ears, they can do that. Channel selection, the microphone, which we'll get into a little bit, is a lockable XLR, 3-pin XLR that goes into that. And then on the bottom is 2 DCS LAN connections, so you can daisy chain your units in and out with auto termination, so there's no little termination that needs to happen at the end of the unit. Getting into the buttons, this is what I was saying, depending on the overlay that you snap over the front of this unit, it's going to dictate whether it's a chairman, an interpreter, a delegate with mute functionality, or just delegate speak. Looking at the flush mount, this is the other option we have. It's a flush mount, so you drill a single hole. You can drop that unit in, so this is great for a podium. If it's a flush mount unit that everyone also requires a speaker, the speaker's a separate item, and you drill a secondary hole and drop that in. And this works the same way as the delegate units, where the buttons and the button overlays dictate what it's going to be. So the one on your left, the smaller one, that's just going to be a speak functionality, where the one on the right is actually going to have that return audio for that interpretation channel, and that one has the 3.5 millimeter. And then all your overlays are going to dictate what that unit is actually doing. So looking at our microphone options, we have a 16 and the 20-inch single flex microphone, all 3-pin XLR, and it's including our new shotgun microphone, which is what you're hearing me on right now. This thing is like a month out of the gate, and we've already been really happy with it. You'll already see when we switch over to W, I'll flip this one on. This microphone sounds incredible, but in terms of this one's going to have to come a little bit closer because this gooseneck is doing such a good job at kind of reaching out and grabbing me. In terms of cabling, we are going to beat you over the head with this today. You're going to see this slide like 32 more times, and I think we'll hand out T-shirts with this slide on it. But use our cabling. Our cabling is purpose-built for these units in 9 lengths from 2 feet all the way up to 150 feet. And this should be used for all your interconnects. If you can't get this cable through a conduit run or something like that, we can provide you with the cable spec to pull this in. But we'll tell you to go ahead and punch it down to a jack and then use these cablings for all your interconnects. There's a whole lot of reasons why we want you to use this cabling. The biggest one is we're sending a lot of voltage and a lot of stuff all the way down this line, and we've just seen too many issues out in the field where people are trying to terminate these and the terminations are just wrong. And so a lot of times people will call support and saying, hey, my entire chain's blinking. The first thing they'll ask is, are you using cable? If we hear no, we'll pretty much say, all right, we're going to FedEx you a bunch of cables. We'll use these and lay it across the floor and see if it works. And I would say 95% of the time that's fixing the problem. So it's an easy thing. You can order them from us. You can still make margin on them, all that type of stuff. So just, if you take one thing away, just use our cabling. It's going to save you a lot of headaches down the road. Accessories for the system, there's a whole bunch of options, including junction boxes if a daisy chain doesn't make sense, power inserters if you're getting past that 50, 60 units and you need to add more power in, which we're using for the entire back table. This chain ends up running out, and we have a power inserter over here somewhere. Signal repeaters that regenerate the signal, LAN switchers, so if you're doing divide combine rooms, you can move units from one CCU, from 2 separate CCUs to move all the units over to a single CCU. Audio output, so if you need to, if your CCU's in one spot, but maybe your house system is in another, output boxes for that, or units to feed IR systems for assisted listening. Redundant controllers for power supplies, so you can feed 2 power supplies into that, and then that feeds into your CCU, so if you have a failure, it's switching over for you. A lot of options, including headphones, including over-the-ear, stethoscope-style, single ear clips, interpreter headsets. These aren't going to be, 846s or some crazy great-sounding headphone, but these also do tend to walk, so they're priced accordingly for your customers to just keep buying them if they keep walking off. So what does this system kind of look like from a high level? Real simple. We have our CCU, got delegate units with headphones, interpreter stations, and then the top we're doing some IR transmission for assisted listening, and that could include both the floor mix and interpretation channels all up through that IR system. So real kind of basic, simple, gets you up and going really quick, really high functioning system that will set up quick and isn't going to create a lot of headaches in terms of moving around, unplugging, all that type of stuff. So any questions before we move on 5900? Told you this is going to be quick.
How many,
I can't hear you. Can you use your microphone?
how many additional units can you add with the power relay that
I think it's up to 250
per device?
CCU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. And so going on to MicroFlex Complete. We had been doing 5900 for quite a while, and even a line called 6000. And everyone's first question is like, oh, this is great. This is what we need. When can you guys get rid of the wires? And so that's where this was all born out of, was how do we get rid of the wires but still provide this conferencing functionality that everyone's looking for? And this is where MXCW really came in. And so kind of the high-level features of MXCW, AES encryption on all the audio, going back and forth between the delegate units and the APT. Sets up really, really quickly, super simple. Per APT, which is what this is over my right shoulder, we can have up to 125 of these delegate units connected to that one APT with a maximum of 8 channels speaking at any time, just like a normal conference system. Automatic RF interference detection avoidance. When We were in Dallas last week, and we didn't do an RF coordination there. We came and set this up. We didn't do it here. Why? Because this thing's doing it for us. We don't need to log in there and do any sort of scanning or anything like that, because it's actively scanning the spectrum right now. As we sit here, we're on a certain channel, but it's going through and scanning, and if this channel starts to dip, it'll switch us over to another channel without any loss of audio or anything. So we don't even log into that page anymore, but you guys will see it here in a little bit. And then also analog and digital I/O. So on the bottom of that unit, we have one on the demo table back there we can take a look at. There's an XLR input and an XLR output. And then there's also 10 channels of Dante audio inputs and outputs coming out of that box. So a lot of flexibility. What you're hearing me now is we're going into the CCU, out of the CCU, onto the Dante network. We're doing some mixing in that APT, and that's how we're kind of feeding everything all around, is through the mixer in that APT over Dante. So just a lot of functionality all wrapped up in this system. Kind of similar to DIS, or to 5900, is small component list. This really consists of the APT, the delegate unit, microphone selections, and a battery charger. So getting into the APT, as I said, 125 conference units can be paired off to that at any time. Operates in the 5 gigahertz and the 2.4 gigahertz. Don't be scared about 2.4. We can still play in that area, and we'll see some frequency management stuff a little later that can talk about it. That interference detection avoidance I spoke about, encryption, analog inputs, Dante inputs. The entire system can be configured from the front LCD, just your up-down arrow and your enter-exits. Or it has an embedded GUI, just like 5900, that you can actually get into, create names, and so when somebody's talking on the unit, you can see their name, there's voting, all this other type of stuff. And then Dante, everything's fun. The delegate unit, this is a really cool feature of the delegate unit. It can act as different roles. So I can be in a chairman role, which gives me the ability to start and stop voting, to look at agenda items, all that type of stuff, to turn microphones on and off. Then there's delegate roles for just people who want to participate in the meeting. We have a listener role, so that is one where you could set this in a press room, or if you had an overflow area, you could pull the microphone out of it, either plug into the headphone jack on the side or just let them use a speaker built into the unit, and the buttons aren't going to do anything, so you don't have to worry about them interrupting the feed, anything like that. It's just a unit that someone can listen with. And then also the last role, which is similar to some MXC, is an ambient role, which is if we're streaming this out or we're on a call, we never want that just dead silence because people assume something's happened to the call. So the listener or the ambient role allows it, if all the microphones get shut off, you can have one sitting in the back of the room that'll light up just to keep that room noise in the signal. Touchscreen display, so you can get through configurations, do voting, look at agendas, turn people on and off. Built-in loudspeaker, obviously, just like what you're hearing me on now. NFC card slot, so you can program NFC cards, slide those in. It'll ID the person. Instead of it just saying seat 1, it'll say Tyler Troutman or whatever the name might be. There's a micro USB slot on the rear of it. So if you're concerned that 11 and a half, 12 hours of battery isn't going to be enough, you can plug a micro USB into that, and that will charge the battery and keep the unit running all day if you want it to. There's a 3.5 millimeter TRRS on the back for an additional role called a remote participant role, which should be coming out pretty soon. And that will be for plugging in a cell phone. And so if someone's late or someone can't make it, you can plug a cell phone into that, turn it into a remote participant, and they'll be able to come into the meeting and have full duplex audio. And then 3.5 millimeters on either side, because this can act as a dual delegate, so one unit can be for 2 people, with interpretation and floor mix fed to those. The charger, not much to say here. You pull the batteries out, you put them in there, it charges them. So it does its job in that sense. The important points here, it'll take you from 0 to 50% in an hour and a half, all the way up to a full charge in about 4 hours. One really cool feature is if it's a rental house, or maybe this system only gets used once a quarter for the big quarterly meeting, you can pull all the batteries out, put them in the charger, and enable what's called storage mode, and it'll let the batteries go all the way down to about 30% and hold them there, because for lithium, that's where lithium batteries want to sit, to kind of store them and keep the life instead of keeping them at 100%. So it's it's a really nice feature that you can only get with the charger, and it's networked. It's on the network, so you can view all the statistics of battery cycle count, health, temperature, all that type of stuff on the network. The battery's a 3-cell lithium, same stuff that Tesla's using, except they have like 7 zillion of them in their car. We have 3. It's included with all 640 units. You don't have to order the batteries separately. If your customer is concerned, you want to order a couple batteries, that's great. I would probably not suggest ordering an extra battery for every unit. It's just kind of unnecessary. They'll probably sit in the box more than they'll sit anywhere else. But every unit comes with a battery. It's important to know. Reporting and health measurements through the charger, and then there's also a little 5-bar LED that you can click to actually check the battery health without having to put it back in the charger. And you can do it with the battery out or through the little window. You can press it and see battery life while the unit's still powered up. Goosenecks, same as as 5900 with the length, 16 and 20 inches, but it's a completely different microphone. This uses a proprietary 10-pin that we have that's doing a lot of stuff in there. It's, colors, it's CommShield technology, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and there's some pins that we're not even using that we're trying to kind of future-proof ourselves. But 16 and 20 inch, the difference is we have, with the 5900 system, we have a single flex like this one. But with MXCW and MXC, we've added a dual flex functionality. So there's flex at the bottom, and there can also be a flex at the top. This has become a really popular option. And then also the new shotgun is an option for MXCW as well. So if we take a look at some of the applications, like what makes this so great, kind of going back to people want something that's easy and quick to set up. And so for our structured meeting, we might just have simple chairman control. You just have the guy who's running the meeting, have a bunch of delegates, we can get it all set out really quickly. We can even provide our employees with NFC cards. So as soon as they walk in, they can sit down, they can plug that NFC card in, it identifies themselves, and they can get into the meeting. And when that person's talking, I can see on the screen that Bob is talking or Mary's talking. So really, really quick. In a flexible meeting space, which I kind of consider this to be a flexible meeting space because we came from this week and we're in here this week, having that avoidance detection. I don't have to worry about coming in here and doing a coordination and being concerned about what else is in here because it's doing all of that for me. So it just sets up really quickly. And then also, if I wanted to pipe this into the house system, I can just plug an XLR into the bottom of that and feed that into the house system, and we're off and going. And so, once again, really quick. And then kind of the bigger one we've been seeing more and more lately is these meetings don't always happen in a newer room like this. A lot of time it's happening in a really old building that has no conduit and is full of asbestos and lead paint, and no one wants to mess with the walls or try to pull anything in. So as long as you can get a single network cable to that APT, either on a wall or in the ceiling, or even if they don't even want to do that, if they already have an existing network jack, and they can just put it on a mic stand just like that and set it out, and then set all the units out, and they can have really highly functional meetings with voting and all these things without having to touch anything in the walls. So once again, just really quick, really easy, without having to dig into a bunch of cabling. Kind of a system at a glance. We have a ULXD kit that we're routing over Dante and doing a bunch of crazy stuff with, but we could have just as easily just plugged that XLR into the bottom of that, and when someone talks into a wireless microphone, it comes out of your speakers, and it could be that simple. That analog to feed the house system, you can run it off PoE, and then the units just talk back and forth. Here's the Canadian slide. Thanks, Ben, with that BlackBerry. Yeah. Illustrating that remote participant. So having the ability to plug that phone in, plug it into that back jack, get off and going with having someone who isn't there on time or isn't going to be there at all because they live in Canada and they can't come to the US. That overflow feed, this just kind of demonstrates it being able to just plug a powered speaker into that 3.5 millimeter and cranking that thing up. So if your press are in a different room, or if the room's too small because it's some big council meeting and you have the overflow out in the lobby, you could just throw one out in the lobby with the powered speaker and have that as an overflow. We look at the inside the embedded GUI. We once again get 3 views. We get that admin view with full controls of participant names and roles and audio routing, both Dante and analog, everything you can imagine, password access, SSID access. The chairman view, which is, letting participants on and off, starting votes, doing all that type of stuff. They have like a singular audio control, which is like the loudspeaker volume up or down. But in the admin view, I can adjust more of that audio levels. And then the display view, which could be who's speaking, who's in the request list, and if I fire up a vote, what are my voting results, So really, really simple. Getting into the bands, this primarily is going to be operating in the DFS band. I think we have a boatload of DFS here, and that's pretty much reserved for radar systems. And the reason we can play in this space, it's unlicensed, anybody can be here, but there are really strict rules that the FCC makes you follow. And one of those rules is if something of priority, if a radar system in this area for some reason fires up, we need to get out of that channel in 60 seconds. And so not a lot of people are in this space because the rules are too tight. But what this thing is constantly doing with two transceivers built into it, one is to operate this system, and the other one is to just constantly scan the spectrum and look at DFS channels. And that way, if we get into a situation where we're on a channel and something fires up in the same channel we're in, it can just bump us to another channel that it already knows is clean, already knows has the bandwidth to move us over to immediately. So that's going to be the primary. Secondary is going to be in the 5 gigahertz range, and there's still plenty of open channels that we can be in that space. And then kind of our bottom range is 2.4. We can operate in that. We could probably switch this whole system over to 2.4 with all the Wi-Fi in here and get a fantastic meeting going. But as you know, 2.4 is insanely crowded right now. There's so much Wi-Fi out there. So, yeah, this is what the wireless operation looks like. So we can see that, you know, we're sitting on this channel 140, and as it's going, it's going to start scanning through all these channels. And if channel 140 gets hit, it'll move us to 52 or 56, or it might even move us to a channel that has lower signal strength, but has plenty of room for us to play in. So, and then this is pretty much 2.4 everywhere is what it looks like. But that doesn't mean we can't be there. We could switch over to that and have a great meeting. So this is just kind of showing you how it's working, how it's constantly scanning, and kind of what it looks like. If you know there's going to be channels that are going to be used, for some reason if you know that, you can actually go in and deselect channels and select channels and all that. So here's pricing. There's map pricing for everything. So you can kind of get an idea of how this prices out and what it all looks like. So it looks like a lot of you plugged your batteries into your units as I was chatting up here. So if I switch over to this one. All right. So now I'm on MXCW. One thing to note is the power up in the state it was left in. So if the unit was powered off and I put it in the charger and put the battery back in, it's going to stay off. But if the unit is powered on and you pull the battery out and put a new battery in, it'll come back into that powered on state in 30, 45 seconds. So that is kind of, it's a tech thing, right? If a tech needs to run around and slide batteries out between meetings, he doesn't have to worry about sliding batteries in, holding the power button, and moving to the next. He can just pop them out and pop them back in. The unit will come back up, pair off to the last connected SSID, and get going. And that's all function and feature based. We could also make it that every time it boots up, it scans for a new network, or it just shows you a list of the available networks. A lot of different functions we can do. So as a chairman here, I think we might all be chairmans, I don't know, I can start a vote. So you should all see voting, and you can click yes, abstain, no. We can do all this stuff. And in that display view right now, if we had a screen that we could show, you'd be seeing the voting results and all that type of stuff. And so this is an ad hoc vote, and this is something important to know right now with MXCW, is this is an ad hoc vote. This isn't being recorded anywhere. And a lot of council chambers work like this. If this is the vote, and once they're done, and I stop this vote, and we're looking at the results, somebody will record this, somebody will take a picture of it, somebody will do that. And so there's a lot of places that this is completely fine with. And as we get into MXC, you'll start to see some of the differences with voting is logged and it's secured and all these things, because when you get into the larger spaces or council chambers where it's like, listen, we are following these crazy guidelines and all this needs to be secured, we can offer that functionality as well. So that's kind of MXC from the high level. Is there any questions on that?
The voting on the MXCW system cannot be secure at all as of now.
So it's secure in the way of like what we're doing in here is secure, but in terms of being recorded somewhere, no, not right now.
So there's no way through the APT to have, like, because I see you have other controls through that laptop there. Is there any way to, yesterday you had mentioned there's a way to, because we were kind of going crazy with the voting, and you said, okay, everybody stop, because people changing their minds. And if it's up on the screen, you know, people tend to, we talked about it yesterday, where, oh, everyone's voting yes, I don't want to be the one guy voting no, I'll just change at the last minute. There's got to be a cutoff, and that's done through that laptop. Yeah,
so it can be done through the laptop, or I have a chairman role. So in my chairman role, I could start the vote, people could vote, and we could put a time to it. I could just say, hey, I'm going to stop voting in 5 seconds, or I'm going to stop voting now. And so as a chairman, I can stop it from here, or somebody could stop it from the laptop. And once it's stopped, people can't change their results because the vote's been stopped. And that's where either somebody on the admin panel can just grab a screenshot of it, somebody can grab a camera shot of it, or somebody just writes it down. You have an official clerk who her job is to be honest about all this.
Is that final tabulation that I'm seeing here on my screen, is that something that would show up on the,
Yep.
you just do a screenshot from a laptop?
Exactly,
too?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And you mentioned yesterday there was a way to put a timer rather than having a chairman have to press a button to stop.
So timer should be coming, I think, in the firmware for MXCW, or no? We definitely have timers in MXC that you guys will see a little bit later. I'll get you an answer on the MXCW. Yeah.
Whoa, really close there. What about a CDA like the previous version? Is there a CDA graphic?
So the CDA for this version would be, I could probably pull it up. Let me see here. Let's see here.
While Tyler's pulling it up, the CDA version for this would just be having someone log into the display only
Yeah.
view. Because you can have multiple users log into the same APT under different rules. So that's just the display
Yeah.
of the application.
So this is when I log into the IP address, I have three options. I can log in as an admin, a chairman, or just a display view. So this is the display view. So we're looking at the voting results. If I were to close that, we go back to our active speaker list and request list. If I were to start another vote, we'll see that it starts going, and as people start adding in, it'll kind of build up. But once I stop the vote, that's kind of locked in now. So this would be the view, kind of your CDA view of your voting.
And it's web-based too,
Yep.
so I could have that on a digital signage player somewhere showing the votes.
Exactly.
Now,
And
what
that's-
happens if a vote isn't called? It just keeps the same stats that were in there from the previous vote, or does it go blank? What happens?
So when I close, so I'm looking as a chairman, and it could be the same thing from the chairman, browser. When I hit close vote right here, I'm looking at the results, and since I'm the chairman, I can now redo this vote or just close it. It's in your speaker list.
I think his question was, does it go away forever? There's no way to go back and
Yeah,
look
yeah,
at
no,
it.
it's gone.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's not recorded anywhere. That was kind of the point.
Is there a way with the MXCW to be able to determine, I mean, you see the vote, I got this many yes, this many no's, this many abstains, who voted what?
Not right now on MXCW. On MXC you can.
Right.
So MXC can report who did all that.
Who
type
did
of voting.
what, yeah.
All right. Let me see where. All right. So with no more questions, we will hop into our quick little run through of MXC. And then we'll get to our super, super fun council meeting. So MXC kind of got born. Here's kind of a great slide of how all cool it looks, and it's all sitting in front of you. It got born out of this, which was DIS 6000. And DIS 6000, while at the time was the best, now it looks very dated compared to what you're seeing in front of you. And there was just a lot of parts and pieces that went along with the system. And so we took a step back and we said, we need to clean this up. We need to make this better. We need our own mic capsules on these things. So what can we do? And this is what we came up with. We really stripped down the line. We really went with what the market's looking for and what they have. And that's what we have here. And that's what you guys are hearing right now. And so once again, our CCU, it's the heart of the whole system. The same single rack that's sitting in there, just now operating in an MXC mode. Expandable up to 3,800 delegate units and participants. When you buy the unit out of the box without any sort of upgraded software or anything like that, interpretation, you get 4 interpretation channels, that built-in web server, the 8 analog outputs and 2 inputs, the same power requirements of roughly 50 of these units, depending on cabling and unit type. But the cool thing with MXCW is redundant cabling, so we can actually close that loop back into the system. And so if you have a break anywhere, you have that redundancy to be able to maintain that signal chain. The important thing to note is when you order the DIS CCU, you'll have to add this FL6000 license, and that's what you'll use to unlock it to make it an MXC CCU instead of a 5900 CCU. So just to note, your reps will definitely be on top of that for you as you're working with them and sending that over. So if we look at the units in front of you, everyone should kind of have the same units kind of going 620, 630, 640, 640 having the touch screen. You can see the feature and functionality. They all have chairman delegate mode, all have NFC, dual delegates, so you can have a single unit sitting between two people. Braille overlays on all of this. When you get up to the 630 and 640, this is where voting will come in. You have voting options, and then obviously the 640 has a touch screen, so you can see agenda, you can do all your voting online, see results on the screen. If you can't do a portable or on top unit, you need to actually flush in the units. We have 2 units for that. We have the 620 and the 630. The difference is being the 630, just like our other 630, has the voting option. If you need pretty much a shallow unit, if you need to go on a podium or you have restrictions, we have these what we call modular units, the FS, which stands for short, and FL, the L stands for long. The FL has the loudspeaker, the FS doesn't. So if you just have a podium mic where you don't need that microphone to have a loudspeaker there, you can just go with the FS unit and it'll just be a microphone. They can come up and tap and start speaking. The important thing to know is in order to get this really shallow depth, we had to remove the brains out of those units. And so every time you need to do one of these modular units, you have to have one of these MIU boxes. And these MIU boxes connect off to these units via HDMI. It's not video, it was just a common cable that we could use that had all the pins we needed, but also if for some reason something happens out in the field and one gets broken, you guys don't have to call us looking for some crazy custom cable. You can just grab an HDMI cable and replace it. So the one we give you is locking, and these do have the locking connectors on them. So the interpretation unit, we can probably do an entire hour just on this thing. It's crazy, it's cool. The most important thing to note is the ISO 20109 certification. And pretty much what that stands for is there are interpreters unions and there's entire companies that this is all they do. And what that certification means is they can come in, sit down, and if they've never touched this unit before, it makes sense to them. They know all the button layout makes sense. It has a USB port, so they usually carry around a configuration that is their configuration. They can put that in the side of the unit, load their configuration, all the buttons changed to exactly what they're big interpretation units. People are being swapped out every hour, so they'll just walk in, plug in their USB, call up their preset, and they're good to go and start to interpret. And so we have one in the back on the demo table. I encourage you to take a look at it. It's pretty cool. It's like flying a spaceship or something. Microphones exact same as MXCW. They're interchangeable with the 16, 20 inch, and then the shotgun, same 10 pin, same interchangeable capsules, all that. The MXC sign, we're super, super excited about this, and you'll get to see it in our council meeting. Dual-sided, 4-bit grayscale, powered over the DCS LAN, but the cool thing about it is once I write to this, and I think there was one sitting out on the table when everyone walked in, once I write to this, it holds that image. You can unplug it from power, and it's going to hold that image forever. So really cool. Can be used for dual delegates. So if you have dual delegates, it'll draw a line down the middle and have everyone's name. It can be black on white, white on black. There's a lot of options that you can do with this sign. The same sign is both, can sit on top, or there's just this little plastic rim will pop out and it can be flush mounted into a permanent install. A lot of really cool things. People are having a lot of fun thinking about ways to use this, and you'll get to see how it functions today. Hey, look, there's this DCS LAN slide I told you guys about. We're back at it. So once again, use our cables as much as possible. If you need to customize a cable, definitely work with the reps and work with us directly. We will give you all the specs. We'll try to help you out as much as possible in the beginning, because once everything's, as you guys know, once it's all pulled and installed, it's a lot harder to go back and swap out cables. So use our cables as much as possible.
What about repairing them? So, like, you know, they're installed and they're popping up out of the table, what kind of things that you couldn't head on it?
If it's popping up out of the table, and we do have rooms where, listen, these units get pulled out and put away, it's always use a cable and then punch down to a jack, and then just use a short, we have really short jumpers that you plug into the bottom and put on top. You can terminate these things, but it's super hard. It has to be shielded all the way through, because we're using every single pin plus the shielding to get all this voltage and all this data and all this stuff down the road. So the tolerances are just super high. And unfortunately, there's no cable tester out there to really test if you got this right, because it's not data. We're not sending packets down this. We're sending a whole lot of stuff. So if you can, use our cables. If you can make it in a way that if you know one might get broken, just figure out a way to make it so it's serviceable in a way that you might be able to swap it out instead of having to sit there and re-terminate nonstop. They're not that expensive, and like I said, you can still sell them and make margin on them and all that fun stuff. So some licensing options, we're going to kind of breeze through this, but your base DIS CCU, which was for your MXC system with that FL6000 license I said you need, you can get up to 250 units. If you need more than 250 units, we could add another license to get you all the way up to 3,800. If the 4 interpretation channels aren't enough, we have licenses to get you all the way up to 31. So if languages are an option, we can definitely support that. User interface, just like 5900 and even MXCW, we have a browser-based interface on that you can go in and do a lot of changes, name changes, role changes, all that type of stuff, play with audio settings. But the real power of MXC, and you'll see in our council meeting, comes when you start adding Software 6000. And Software 6000 is everything that you can ever want it to be, because there's just a gazillion features and licenses and all these things. And the licensing thing was kind of a problem. And in the beginning, we had 28 SKUs, and it was just way too much because as things would change or the spec would change, you wouldn't know what it was. So now, just by buying Software 6000, we went all the way down from 28 all the way down to 8, and you can see that first bracket includes all of these categories on the right. So if you buy Software 6000, you're getting meeting creation, agenda creation, mimic control, which you guys will see, microphone, ID card programming, all these things just kind of included in that single SKU. But we can also support a lot of other forms and functionality, and this is where we'd really ask you guys to work with us and work with your reps in order to really make sure that you guys have all the licenses and the functionality and all the bits and pieces you need to make these systems work. Additional add-on, you guys will see within Software 6000 there are 3 bits to that. There's CAA, which is an administrative conference administration application, and that's where you create the agendas, you create the meetings, you create the participants and their roles and all that stuff. CUA, which is the utility, which you guys will see, that is me working within this meeting, starting voting, running through the agenda, doing all that type of stuff. And then CDA is our display application. That's what's going to be sent out to remote monitors and all those things, so you can view who's speaking, view who's up next, view the agenda, voting results, all that type of stuff. Software 6000 gives you voting, but it's not stored anywhere. So if that vote needs to be recorded and stored, we have software for that. More microphone control and APIs and all that type of stuff. So like I said, we have a gazillion options for all this. So if we look at this system as an overview, we can see we have delegate units, flush mount units, interpreter units, modular units. The important thing to note that this slide kind of gets off is that you don't have to have a separate DCS LAN chain just for signs. We didn't run 2 cables up here, one for units and one for signs. Everything's just daisy chained right on through. So if we look at a couple applications, we have a city council. They might just want quick participant IDs, and we'll be able to show you this, where I have an NFC card slot, and I can come in and slide this card in. It's going to configure my unit. My name's going to pop up on my sign. If I'm here on Monday and sitting over there on Tuesday, I just slide my card over there, and all of that follows the card, which is really cool. They're going to need agendas, so they should look at Software 6000, and they're going to need to record that vote because it matters, so we have that voting software. Getting into really big conferences, international conferences, where interpretation is going to be a must. They need 28 channels. Well, we can support up to 38, or 31, sorry. Agenda and voting, well, Software 6000 can cover all of that. And displaying the agenda, because they want to be able to support it out in the hallway, using CDA with included software, which is included with Software 6000, would be the way to go. And scaling it all the way back to a boardroom, something really small, but they want high functionality. Having that NFC card for participants to be able to just quickly come in, sit down, slide their card in, and get the meeting up and going is really handy. They want voting, well, that's already included. It's just not recorded, and they're fine with that. So the MXC software out of the gate with FL6000 will do that. And then single channel of interpretations, well, that can support 4 right out of the box, so that's just included. You might be asking, okay, this is all great, and I want to start building this system, but I don't know how many units and the lengths and the cabling and all that stuff, and we need to be worried about power. Well, we thought of that. We have a web-based calculator that you can get to today, dcslan.sure.com. And if you go there, that lets you start to drop in. You can drop in your CCU, and you can say, I've got 2640 units, and I have 2 meters of cable between each one, and I have, you know, a repeater box, and I have a couple 620s, and it'll go ahead and add all those in, and it can show you all the power calculations. It says, like, yep, you're fine with the power supply that comes with it, or you should drop in, you know, a power inserter here. If you want to drop in a junction box, because looping through doesn't make sense. You can drop one of those in and create a separate chain, and it kind of helps you build a little bit of a BOM, but also make sure that what you're speccing, you have the right equipment. So some map pricing for all these items, CCUs and delegate units and microphones and all that type of stuff, to give you an idea. Some pricing on software. Once again, definitely reach out to us or your reps when you start putting this together. And then this is the important slide, kind of what's the overall. So if I'm just getting my MXC unit with that FL6000 license, and I'm going to have 24 of these 620 units, we're running about $1,000 a seat. And if you need the functionality of Software 6000, it's not that big of a bump. We're up to 26,500 to get the functionality with microphone control and agenda management and all that type of stuff that comes with that base Software 6000. So a lot of stuff. I totally just dumped it all on you guys. And hopefully the little council meeting will kind of help connect a bunch of the dots. But are there any questions before we get into this? Yeah.
Can you mix and match the MXC with the MXC wireless or the 5900?
So you can, and that's what we're doing here. As I talk here, I'm coming out of MXCW, and if I speak within MXCW, I'm coming out of MXC. And so you can link wired and wireless audio. Currently, there's no way to link the whole back-end system with voting and agenda management and all that type of stuff between the two different systems.
But the two wired systems can interconnect on the same CCU or no?
No.
No. Okay.
Sorry. If you have what tripped me up is the old DIS 6000, which is still out there, you can add the new MXC onto that, but 5900 and MXC are two separate systems. Anything else?
Can you do a blind vote as well?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you do a blind vote as well?
Yeah, so I could actually start it up on your MXCW. I could start here, and I'll pull up the...
Yeah, because he was mentioning everyone kind of migrates to one vote sometimes. So
well, and politicians love this. If they want to go on the record with their constituents as being one way, but they think something else, they'll watch the vote and they'll go, oh, cool, it's going to fail anyways. I'm going to vote yes, and that way I'm on the record
Gotcha.
for being, And so this is something they all do. They sit there and watch that vote and kind of in one way or the other.
Gotcha.
But we can do a blind vote, and if I pull up...
Politician right here.
So if I pull this up and I start a 3-button secret vote, we can see this voting in progress.
Okay, cool.
So nobody's seeing what's going on. So I vote yes, but you guys aren't seeing current
Awesome.
results on all of this.
Cool.
So this is kind of that forced secret vote. And then once I stop the vote, nobody gets to see
Still
results.
secret. Gotcha.
Yeah, still secret. Chairman can.
You can't, so nobody can see the result,
The chairman
the
can
vote.
see the result.
The final
It doesn't-
result.
yeah, the final result.
but we can't.
No, because it's secret.
Right. I thought the secret thing was like nobody knows who voted what
But you would see it at the end.
until it's ended, and then we can see.
Oh, well, you know what? Sorry.
If the resolution passes.
Yeah, I guess you
I
could
can
do that
share
as well.
that.
You could share it.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Great. Thanks.
All right, so if there are no other questions, can I get my band of comedy trio up here to run through this council meeting? Tyler.
Hey, do you mind sharing all this with the rest of the class? He was talking about his fancy pointer. His digital magnifying glass. Could you tell us a little bit about that, sir?
It's the new Logitech Spotlight remote. Yeah. Yeah. Oops. It's Bluetooth, but it also has a wireless receiver. Obviously, you got highlight, magnify, and then a digital laser pointer. It's cool. It's like $90 on Amazon. So, yeah.
Model not included in the package, so you don't get branded.
I would really love to see how well Vox works on this system.
Vox on the wireless system? I guess we got time to talk about that quickly. Vox mode on MXC is the same as it ever was. It's the same algorithm that's working, which is okay. This was invented for Americans. Seriously, we're lazy. We just want it to work. When we talk, it should turn on. But we also have a problem that if we have a sidebar conversation, it turns like, why is this thing on? I'm having a sidebar conversation. Well, the system's not smart enough to know if you're supposed to know that you're talking to everyone else or your friend. The other problem is if you tune it for someone who's very soft-spoken that sits back here, now the mics are firing off all over the place, and we recommend whenever using the systems, it's just better to have a more formal structured meeting, push the button, do these things. In fact, in this scenario, you're going to see that it actually really works to our advantage. The cameras are going to track based on which mics are activated. So there's a lot of advantages if you can have a more structured meeting. The MXCW does not have Vox mode because we want to make it better. And so we're working on that we're hopeful we'll release something soon. There'll be a much better, more sure auto mix type of Vox mode. That doesn't help you have it right now, but that's the short story.
Yeah, I've installed 3 different discussion systems over the years. One's a Shure, one's a Sennheiser, and we're about to do a Bosch one. And every single client has always said they don't want to push the button, as if the world will end if they have to learn how to push the button to talk. Like they couldn't possibly be bothered to push a button.
Yeah,
and that's always the hardest part with these systems is you really want to limit the number of open mics, especially with you
Right.
need to know who's talking.
That's right.
So,
yeah, we hear you. Oh, and I'm not done doing my thing. So this whole deal that we're about to